Let's talk about Iron Butterfly. You hear that name and you probably think of one song, one gigantic, sprawling epic of a song. But I'm telling you, the story behind how that song came to be is even crazier than its title.
So how in the world did a simple, slurred, maybe slightly wine-fueled mumble somehow transform into a 17-minute psychedelic masterpiece, a song that didn't just define an era, but actually helped kickstart a whole new genre of music? It's an incredible story, so let's get into it.
17 minutes and 5 seconds. Now you gotta remember, back then pop songs were what, 3 minutes tops? This thing was an absolute monster. It took up an entire side of a vinyl record. It basically blew up the rulebook for what a rock song could even be.
So you'd think a song this epic, this groundbreaking, had to be perfectly planned out, right? Well, not even close. The whole thing was a beautiful accident, a perfect storm of happy mistakes.
And it all starts with the title. See, the song was supposed to be called In the Garden of Eden, but according to the legend, frontman Doug Ingle had maybe a little too much wine, like a gallon of it, and when he tried to tell the title to drummer Ron Bushy, it came out all slurred. Bushy just kind of shrugged and wrote down what he heard, phonetically. And just like that, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida was born. But the story of its recording? Oh, that's even crazier. The band gets to the studio, they're waiting around for their producer, and the engineer just says, "Hey, why don't you guys play something so I can get some levels?" So they launch into the song, jamming for 17 straight minutes, and the engineer had the foresight to hit record. That one take, that single, unedited rehearsal, was so raw, so powerful, that it became the final version you hear on the album. No do-overs, no fixes. Pure lightning in a bottle.
Okay, so how does a band even get to a place where they can pull something like that off by accident? Well, to get that, we gotta rewind a bit and look at where they came from. Their story kicks off in San Diego, where they were piecing together a sound that people would later call proto-metal.
And their name tells you everything you need to know about their whole philosophy. The iron part, that was for the heavy, gritty, distorted guitar riffs. But the butterfly, that was for the lighter, more psychedelic, almost classical side of their music. That contrast was their whole thing.
And they didn't just pop up out of nowhere. Look at this. They were grinding for years. They started as a cover band, went through a few different names, and really honed their sound as the house band at a nightclub before they finally landed on the lineup that would change everything.
And after a few shuffles, the classic lineup finally clicks into place. And their secret weapon? A 17-year-old guitarist named Eric Brann. Now this kid was a former violin prodigy, and that classical background brought this incredible melodic sense that perfectly balanced out Doug Ingle's heavy, almost church-like organ.
So you take this one-take wonder, this accidental masterpiece, and this band of really unique talents, and what happens? It turns into a commercial monster, something the music industry had literally never seen before. Get this, in 1976, the music industry decided to create a brand new award for albums that sold 1 million copies, the Platinum Award. And guess which album was the very first to ever receive it? Yep, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. They basically had to invent a new level of success just for this record.
And the album's success was just staggering. It stayed on the Billboard charts for 140 weeks. That is over 2.5 years. It sold millions and millions of copies, and for a while, it was the biggest-selling album in Atlantic Records' entire catalog. I mean, it was outselling absolute legends like Aretha Franklin. It was a phenomenon.
So what was the secret sauce here? How did a 17-minute song become a massive hit? Well, it was all about timing. See, it was way too long for your typical AM pop radio. But for the new, cool, underground FM stations that were popping up, it was perfect. Those DJs wanted long, deep, psychedelic tracks to take their listeners on a journey.
But you know how these stories often go. Behind all that multi-platinum success, things were starting to fall apart. The band was full of conflict, and their story takes a turn into one of rock's strangest and most tragic mysteries.
This band was just always in flux. Even before they made it big, members were quitting over the band's direction. And after the hit, same story. Eric Brann, the guitar prodigy, he leaves because he thinks the band isn't heavy enough. By 1971, Doug Ingle himself was gone, just completely burnt out from touring. That classic lineup barely made it 2 years.
And the weirdness doesn't stop there. Take Philip Taylor Kramer. He played bass for a later version of the band, then went on to become a literal rocket scientist. In 1995, he makes this incredibly bizarre 911 call, and then just vanishes off the face of the earth.
4 years later, his remains were found. The police ruled it a probable suicide, but his family always believed there was foul play involved, that maybe his disappearance was connected to the sensitive missile technology he was working on. It's a mystery that remains unsolved to this day.
But for all that chaos and tragedy, the legacy of their music is, well, it's profound. And it went to places that you would never, ever expect. I mean, check this out. On one side, you've got their heavy sound laying the groundwork for heavy metal, so much so that a band like Slayer covered them. But then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have that iconic drum solo. It was re-recorded and became one of the most important breakbeats in early hip-hop, sampled by pioneers like Kool Herc, all the way up to Nas for his hit Hip Hop Is Dead. From metal to hip-hop, who would have thought?
And of course, you can't talk about this song's legacy without mentioning The Simpsons. That classic scene where Bart swaps the church hymns with In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, and the poor organist has to play the entire 17-minute version. I mean, that's when you know you've made it. It perfectly cemented the song in pop culture as the ultimate symbol of rock and roll excess.
And now, that whole chapter of rock history has officially come to a close. With the passing of frontman Doug Ingle in May of 2024, every single member from that classic, iconic lineup that recorded In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, they're all gone. It truly is the end of an era.
So it leaves you with this one big question, right? Iron Butterfly's greatest achievement, their biggest mark on the world, was a beautiful, chaotic accident. It really makes you wonder, is there something more powerful, more enduring, about a moment of pure, spontaneous genius than something that's been perfectly and meticulously crafted from the start? Something to think about.